Please welcome to the Startup Health stage artist and brain health advocate Susan Schneider-Williams.
Thank you, Mylea.
Thank you, Susan.
Hi, everybody.
I am touched that you agreed to be with us here today. I think most people in this audience, I could see a lot of looks of surprise as we talked about the fact that Robin had Lewy body dementia. And I think there's a perception in the healthcare community that access is often an issue of insurance or money or connections. But, talk with us a little bit about how difficult it was to get the right answers, find the right doctors, and figure out what was going on.
Yeah, so Robin and I were trying desperately to get an answer. And, he'd been in testing for a solid year. And it was so difficult to get the answer. We had a lot of we had our general physician, general neurologist, motor specialist, 2 psychiatrists, a hypnotherapist, and assorted alternative doctors. And that was by the end, how many people who'd come into the fold of trying to get to the bottom of this. And the reason I mention all of those people is because it was a team, but they weren't acting like a team. And there were many, you could really look at what Robin's experience, what our experience was with Lewy body dementia, and our story is very much what you don't want to have happen. And it would be incredibly small-sided to point out, well, this went wrong, and that went wrong, and that went wrong. And believe me, that there's a large list of that. What I learned from what I dug into, I didn't get the answer. What Robin and I were looking for wasn't evident until autopsy. That's just the way it is right now. There is no biomarker for LBD. But in autopsy, they showed he had one of the worst cases they'd ever seen. Nearly every region of his brain and brainstem were infiltrated with Lewy bodies. So that's nearly no neurons were free of Lewy bodies. He was being choked, okay? So that was the, I guess it wasn't that, what I discovered in that and everything that I found out from that, because I had to really go on a discovery process to learn about this. It's not easy. And essentially, the takeaway was, well, you could list that all these things went wrong. And the fact is, it's really a statement about how complex Lewy body dementia is. And when I say Lewy body dementia, which has over 40 symptoms that don't all appear at once, it's hard enough to discover what it is and to diagnose accurately. There's 1.4 million people in the US that have it. It's commonly thought of as the second most common form of dementia next to Alzheimer's. And it's often misdiagnosed or switch diagnosed. Yeah. And what I want to say is that it's a statement about how the whole field of dementia and brain disease is so complex. So it's not that, all this stuff was done wrong. It's let's take a deep breath and realize we only know about 1% of the brain, and to expect that, we have this figured out, or we should, is kind of not really where it's at. Yeah. So to wrap all that back to the idea of team, one of the things what I often say to people now is, it is so important to have a team with you on any of these, as you start going down in these roads. Your team needs like a quarterback or a team captain, and everyone needs to be functioning together. And so, I don't think I answered your question, but
you did.
Went through a lot of stuff.
I think you did. I think you talked about the challenges and also the fact that we need better care coordination, right? Doctors need to be talking to each other and sharing information. And that doesn't happen as much as we would like. And there was some mention of interoperability in the talk before ours, and that is part of the problem. Just even sharing records and information is really difficult within the current system. And your journey led you to get involved with the American Brain Foundation. So you're doing a lot of advocacy right now in brain disease. And I was really impressed with your work, and in particular, a goalpost that you've set for yourself for 2020. So you share with the Startup Health community a little bit about what you're working on right now.
Sure. So when to back it up, when I started diving into, now that I had the name of this disease, I started turning over every stone. I didn't want my own, I don't know if I'm using this phrase correctly, but cognitive dissonance to try and tell me a story that would make me feel comfortable about what happened. So I checked all the evidence, and my father's a pathologist. I'm sure I got that from him. And with what I found out, there was no way I could not do anything about it. There was no way I could not share what I found out. The fact that Robin is known by pretty much everyone in the world, and it's not right for misunderstanding to be out there. It's not right for him and for the people suffering from Lewy body dementia, from associated disorders or anything else. It's just not right. So, reluctantly, I was in a position where I had to do something, because I just felt like I had to do something with this information. And so that's when I started talking about it, and I've spoken around the country a bit, the American Brain Foundation came to me, and they wanted to give me their Commitment to Cures Award, which was kind of shocking because, I just didn't expect that. And then I got introduced to them. And what I saw that was a good fit for me personally in my experience and working with the American Brain Foundation is that the big surprise about Robin's disease to me that I discovered afterwards was, while it was accurate that yes, he had Parkinson's, that was an accurate diagnosis, clinically he had Parkinson's, but pathologically he had diffuse Lewy body dementia. And when I came to understand from a neuropathologist who told me, he said, essentially, it's a spectrum disease. And I started to get really upset at this point because I thought, I come from a background in graphic design and marketing, and this thing is so named so wrong, and all this misinformation is out there. But the reality is, Parkinson's is on one end, LBD is on the other end. And you know what? The common pathology is Lewy bodies. And so I just thought so that pushed me to want to learn more and more. And it brought me to the American Brain Foundation because they are looking at the interconnectedness of all these diseases. So we get to work with accomplished groups like Michael J. Fox Foundation, Alzheimer's Association, and many others to basically create little SWAT teams that go in on targeted offenses to deal with common mechanisms within these diseases and specific, whatever we can. It's really targeted at getting more money, more dollars for the researchers to go after these targeted offenses. And the one I'm most excited about right now is we've created the Lewy Body Dementia Fund at the American Brain Foundation, and we asked some of the families that we work with, like myself, who've been affected by Lewy body dementia, we said, what do you think is the most important thing that needs to be solved in LBD? And overwhelmingly, they said, we need a biomarker. And I was all in on that. We were dying for diagnosis, right? And so we took that information and we assembled 10 of the top researchers in LBD around the world, and we asked them, would you agree with this? Is this what we need, what we should go after? Because we want you to design a research grant award. And they said, oh yeah, that's what we need. And so we said, okay. And they designed it, they finished it. It's a $5.5 million research grant award targeted at finding an early biomarker. And right now we've got about $3 million in commitments from some very prestigious groups. And I was just kind of joking in the green room, I really want the next $2.5 million by my birthday, which is in a couple of weeks. So, but I want to see this done because I know the researchers are dying to go after this, And again, this is one tiny part of the big ocean of what needs to be discovered. But what I want to say, importantly, what they're finding out, and I'm sure people in this room are well aware, that if an investment in Lewy body dementia in this biomarker project could have a return in other synucleinopathies or Parkinson's. These things are more closely connected than we knew before.
Yeah.
So, and you as well you've got a program going on right now, right?
We're doing a big study. Yeah, we're doing a big study. I think, for me, when we very first met, you said a cure for one will be a cure for many, a biomarker for one will be a biomarker for many, and I think that's really true. And your moonshot, to use our startup language this year, is that Lewy Body Fund. So I'm going to make sure everybody knows how they can contribute to this fund before we leave today, because it's incredible work that Susan's doing. I think you go to the Brain Foundation of America's website, and then it's a /LBD.
Yeah, it's americanbrainfoundation.org/LBD.
Right,
And,
to learn more about the fund and understand what we can all do to contribute, because I love her moonshot. We are actually, yes, we're doing a large study. So we're doing the first ever population health study in cognition. This is important because you mentioned that we know about 1% about the brain. That's true, and I want to bring us all back to probably before most of us were born, to 1948, when the Framingham Heart Study was launched, which is still an ongoing study of heart disease. We knew about the heart back then about what we know about the brain now, which is precious little. And from the Framingham has come the knowledge about blood pressure and heart disease, and cholesterol and heart disease, and exercise and heart disease. The Framingham is the most seminal medical study ever done. It's a population health study in heart disease. It needs to be replicated in dementia. We don't have 70 years. We can't wait this long. So we partnered at Savonix with the Boston University School of Public Health, who run the Framingham, to do a 3-year population health study looking at all brains, all healthy brains, and also brains with problems. We want all brains, all comers. Don't worry, we're not going to take it out of your head. We're just going to do some cognitive testing and take a health history. And if you're an Apple user, we're going to grab your data from the health app, so things like your activity and your heart rate and other things like that for those biomarkers, right? Because we're trying to look at what are the biomarkers for dementia early on. And we know them for heart disease, right? High blood pressure, high cholesterol. Guess what? Those are behavioral outputs, right? How do you get high blood pressure? How do you get high cholesterol? Largely diet and lifestyle. So we can even have biomarkers that are behaviorally driven. And so you can see here, I would like every single person in this room to enroll in the study. It takes about 30 minutes. It is an IRB-run study. We're not selling your data to marketing lists. This is a legitimate scientific study, and we'd love you to take part. And please do donate to the LBD Fund. We are personally involved at Savonix with research. Beyond that, Susan, you and I have had a lot of conversations about what could have gone better. And I think it's one thing to look back, as you said, and the problem is this long, but let's look to the future and think about how we can make it different. Robin's note to you, I want people to be less afraid. How can we use digital tools, do you think, to transform the future in the dementia space?
First, Mylea, I want to say, I really want to thank you and what you've created at Savonix, because if you think about it, what you've done is you're putting an image on something that's been invisible.
Thank you.
Cognitive decline. This is one of the most misunderstood and scary things. And reality is, dementia is essentially the new cancer. Whether we like it or not, it's kind of been invisible, and that can sound really scary at first until you get into the solution on it. And what you guys have done is you're putting an image to that. And not only that, but you're going to be having, God willing, avatars to help with the application. And I think with that digital help of getting the data and walking people through a cognitive test that is aligned so well with what the medical profession needs, what insurance company needs, you're taking it, you've gone from you've taken this really terrible test that used to exist and still exists in many general physicians' offices, which is the type of test that my mom, I asked her several months ago because she had taken it, and I said, what were some of the questions on it? And I was disgusted, because if you said yes to any of these questions and essentially were failing it, you should already be dead. There was no gray area of figuring out, so what is that? It's too late by the time, So what you've done,
Much more sensitive.
okay,
Yes.
that is an understatement. And again, it's bringing attention and awareness and making this stuff feel real, which it is.
Yeah.
And so with that digital, it's important to have the care along with it. And this rolls back to the idea of a team or people who are able to interpret the results, who, the scientists and researchers, they need the data you are collecting. And that data needs to be collected carefully. And if you could say for a moment just about the team on your end, the research, who you have involved, it's not like you just got a bunch of bread bakers to make this or something. I mean, not that bread baking is...
Bread baking's good.
I do
a lot of it.
It's
my therapy.
I need to bake.
I do. You know that. We talked about that over the holidays. We've assembled a team of clinical neuropsychologists, and so this is the field that traditionally does the testing, usually in inpatient facilities. You'll usually often check in for hours and hours of testing. These are sensitive tests that pick up, percentile-based changes in things like memory, and different kinds of memory: episodic memory, verbal memory, visual spatial memory, impulse control, social cognition, so things like emotion regulation, attention focus. These are the many domains that neuropsychologists test. And we report on them across the bell curve. So the testing is sensitive. It can tell if you're a high performer at the 98th or 80th percentile, or if you're in the average range, which 85% of us are, or if you're in the low average or low range for these kinds of domains. And the kinds of impairment you have point to the kind of dementia that you might be suffering from, because different dementias start in different brain regions, and we know that. You talked about that earlier. And so those early symptoms can actually, while they're not a biomarker, they can give us at least a provisional diagnosis of what's going on in the brain before autopsy, which can be very comforting to folks. So we've productized this, and we've created an avatar-driven, with better avatars coming, virtual neuropsychologist to walk the patient through the testing, administer it, and then score and report it. But unlike the reports I wrote when I was practicing, which were jargon-filled medical documents, our reports are written at about the 5th grade level so that the average person can understand what they're reading and what's happening to them.
I think that's great. And just a shout out for neuropsychiatry and neuropsychiatrists, because I just think there needs to be more neuro in the game in general now going forward. And what you're doing is providing that care. I know you've talked about there's Savonix Cure and there's Savonix Care.
Yeah.
And it's important, this is to face your own cognitive decline or even want to go there. It's very scary, especially when you have no idea. Does this mean I'm gonna lose my job? Oh no, I don't want my family to know, or maybe, I think about if Robin Tour have had testing done, which he was about to go to inpatient neurocognitive testing, which he did not want to do. And what Mylea's group offers, what your company has created, is something that could be done at home with proper help. And I think what's so important about that, just like we're, some people are wanting to know about, well, what genes do they have and what should they be looking out for? Well, if you don't have someone, like I haven't done that yet, because I want to be darn sure that I'm talking to someone who can interpret those results for me, so I don't spend the next 10 years freaking out about something or doing something that is not applicable. It has no reference point. So what you guys are doing is beginning a new way of understanding dementia and brain disease, and again, making it visible, and the proper care around that is all important. Like the people who were speaking on the earlier panel, it's not just like the AI, it's just not the data, it's what are we doing with it, and how are we conveying that to the patient and their families. So real important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. And that's a huge piece of what we do. The testing is the first part, but the follow-up is the care plan, and it's also the information for the patient and their family. And our care plans come in 3 personas: for the specialist, for the general practitioner or nurse, or for the at-home or informal care provider. So for the family, recommendations on how to manage the symptoms at home. And really the goal of that is to improve quality of life and to reduce anxiety around dealing with cognitive decline.
cognitive decline in itself causes anxiety.
Yes.
And as I mentioned, the amygdala area of his brain was so badly affected, and that is the area that acts like our barometer. Imagine you go to a thermostat and you can't turn the thermostat anymore, and it keeps getting hotter, and there's nothing you can do about it. That is like the amygdala being broken, and so anything that can be done to help ameliorate any fears that would come up, not only around testing, just to back up a bit, someone with cognitive decline, they may be purposely holding back some of the data, or they may not be able to convey all the data because they've lost the ability to retrieve it within themselves. And so that's, again, why it's so important that this, being able to collect these things needs to be handled with care. And I think that, your company is really doing that.
Thank you. It's very kind of you to say. So what's next for you with the film? So debuting in May, right? Is that the goal right now?
Yeah, so it was picked up for distribution, which is great. It's kind of, I think I've been in denial that it's actually happening. We've been working on this for like 3 or 4 years, so, but it has been picked up. So in May, it's going to come out. And one of the great things that the director, Tyler Norwood, with Sky Dojo Films, what he did, and this was something I expressed early on when I started working with him, was this needs to be used to go on raising awareness and funds to solve this stuff. This is not going to go down some channel of distribution and disappear into Hollywood. This needs to be something that can be used to help educate and ease the pain, make people less afraid, as Robin said, and get the scientists what they need so we can plow our way through this stuff. And that's exactly what he did, so we're really excited about that. And I'm just wondering if I can say much more about it. I don't know. It's still kind of, it's still kind of stealth. But
you've had a lot. It's been a big journey for you to get it done.
Yeah. It's been a road. But once I finish that, my part in it anyway, I'll help do what I can to help launch. I really don't like to do that stuff. I have a job. I'm a professional artist, and I'm also a mom. And like this advocacy stuff, I don't have time for this, But it's not what I planned. But I gotta say, the people I've met along the way, it's a bonus I didn't expect, really. And I've gotten to. It was fun to see some of the Washington D.C. shots in there. I've gotten to go to Washington several times, work with many different groups, and help to try raise awareness. And, my mind's been pretty blown by all aspects of brain disease. People who have it, I was there with 300 Parkinson's patients in Washington, D.C., and we got snowed out. We didn't get a chance to actually go to the Hill, but we spent 48 hours in a basement in a hotel learning what we were going to do, planning our attack on Washington, D.C. And when the news came down that we were snowed out, we couldn't actually go to the Hill. These are a lot of people who came without their caregivers, who have difficulty. There was one man who got stuck in the snow because one of the things that happens with Parkinson's, and actually Robin had this as well, is you can get stuck in a frozen stance. And he was stuck in a frozen stance outside the hotel, and snow started to accumulate on him. And you know what happened? Several of the other people who were in our group, they knew what was happening to their friend, and they went out to him. And if you stand beside the person who is in that situation and you walk forward just by their side, their brain will kick in and they can get out of it. And that's what they did. And we got to talk about this stuff on snow day. So we got to see that snow day was actually really a blessing. And but then I wasn't satisfied because I was ticked off I didn't get to go to the Hill. So I came back again. And then I got to go actually and then I got to come back again and it's been really mind-blowing to watch. After my mind's been blown by what I've learned about these diseases and how closely linked they really are, and how much amazing work is going on in research facilities across the country, to watch other people's minds be blown when I get to talk to them individually and describe that the relationship between Parkinson's and Lewy body dementia. And, you could say the bad news is that, well, there's no cure, and we don't, it can be terrible, and yes, it's really terrible. And the good news is that no case is identical to the next. It's very individualized. So, I just want to underscore, Robin's was one of the worst they'd ever seen. I brought his last 2 years of medical records, coroner's report, and brain scan to 4 professionals in Lewy body dementia across the country and had them interpret everything for me, again, to make sure that I wasn't trying to run my own story around what actually this was, but I got the facts. And that is the good news. Robin's case, I believe, was so extreme because he's just so awesome. And that part of the point of what he needed to do was have us engaged in his last act. And so I just want to do a call out to all of you. If you're not involved already in brain disease in some form or another of making a difference, and if you're looking for something to do, man, dive in. It will blow you away. And dive in where you are with what you have. If it's time, great. If it's money, great. If it's connections, great. Whatever. Everyone's poised to play a role.
I can't add anything to that. I think we should just end with that.
Are we-
Dive in
We're
where you
early.
are.
We have 1 minute and 54 left. We could just.
We're just going to say here, dive in where you are
with what you've got.
have.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfectly
There's no reason
said.
to be bored. That's
And,
all.
and exactly what you did. And exactly what you did.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us
Thank you,
today.
Mylea. Thanks
It's
for
always a
having me.
pleasure talking with you.
Likewise.
And I appreciate you sharing a very private story in a very public way with all of us. So